All right, guys, we are back in my garage for another video. And if you're like me, your BMW is starting to get higher in mileage and it's going to start experiencing a lot of different things. One in particular, in our case, is when the car first turns on or when you turn on the AC, you start to kind of get a weird, funky smell. And that's really common across all vehicles, but BMW decided to make it particularly more complicated in these cars because the cabin air filters and replacing them will usually fix that issue. But this car has multiple. I actually got a kit from BMW for the service that comes with 2 filters, and then I found out mine has 3. So the good news is I'm gonna show you guys exactly how to replace the cabin air filters in your car to help avoid any of those weird smells and just keep everything breathing fresh and clean inside of your car. I'll show you how to do the 2 in the front and the 1 in the rear, and hopefully this will help you get this replacement done on your car. Now keep in mind, this is recommended to be done every 60,000 miles or so, and as most of you are very diligent with your maintenance, I am as well. So I am doing it at exactly 60,000 miles and definitely not a mile over, nowhere near 86,878 miles. That would be way too late. So jumping in here for a quick edit, because that's absolutely not right. You should not do this every 60,000 miles. Based on the manual, you're actually supposed to replace this filter every 20,000 miles if you have the 5-zone control, or every 30,000 miles if you have the 4-zone. So just keep that in mind. It's relatively cheap and easy to do, so you can do it as much as you're comfortable with. It's definitely a good idea to do it more frequently than 60K to make sure you keep the cabin and everything fresh and clean with the air circulating. So yeah, a little bit of a mistake. Not sure if I was just delirious or what there, but because I had fun coming up with that idea and that part of the video is entertaining me, I'm leaving it. So we're going to do it ASAP on this car to help keep everything fresh. And if you are looking to do this job on your vehicle, use the links in the video description to buy the parts you see me installing on my car, because this channel is partnered with ECS Tuning. So you can use my link to shop on their store for OEM and aftermarket parts. It doesn't make it any more expensive for you, but I do earn a commission through your purchase, and that helps support creating more videos like this on the channel. So thanks again in advance for your support, and let's go ahead and get into the car. I'll show you how this DIY is done. Of course, the microfilters are in the car, so starting off, we're gonna go into the passenger side footwell. Everything is underneath the glove box, so it'll be a little hard to show on camera, but I'll try to show you guys the whole process. So first, there are these 2 twist locks that you have to turn them each 90 degrees. So just twist it on that one and then twist this one. And then as you see, the whole panel is now loose. It should kind of drop down. And then we do have one plug right here for this light. So we'll pull that out. And then there's a clip holding this wire harness on. So we'll pull that out as well. And then move the cover out of the way. And then this cover right here is where 2 of the microfilters are. In order to remove it, first thing is to unscrew these 2 screws holding it on. So those are T20s. Sorry, I know this angle really sucks, but it's just really cramped under here, so you're not gonna get a good view of exactly what I'm doing. And then there's this line that's supposed to drain any water that comes in here. So you'll pop off the little lip on it and pull that off. And then this whole panel should come down. There are some little clips at the back, so if it gets hung up, you might need to use your finger to release those, but yeah, it looks like this should just come right off. There we go. And then as you can see, the filters are already falling out, so we'll just slide them down. You do want to pay attention to the arrow. The arrow should be pointed this way towards the engine. And that'll make sure that you're putting the new filter in the right orientation. Now I will say, looking at these old compared to new, it actually looks a lot greater side by side. I thought when I first pulled these out, they didn't look that bad, but if you look at it compared to a new one, it's definitely much dirtier, and you can see, you know, just there's some junk in there. So it definitely is filtering out the dirt and things that you don't want in the car while the air is circulating, but also these can kind of retain some moisture, so that drain tube helps get water out of that box. But if it does retain moisture, then it can kind of create some mold and stuff, and that's usually the smell that you get when you first turn on the AC when these are really old. So replacing it with a fresh new filter will make sure you don't have any of those smells, and also make sure you have adequate filtration for any of the junk that could get sucked into your AC. So now it's time to install the new filters, and as always, installation is just the reverse of removal. Just again, as a reminder, these filters do have an arrow for the direction of airflow, so make sure those arrows are pointed towards the engine when you reinstall them so that they filter everything properly. So go ahead and reinstall both of the microfilters. I started with the one that's closest to the firewall because the space was so cramped back there, and then I did the one closer to the passenger seat. Thankfully, they both stayed in place instead of falling out like the original filters did. Then go ahead and place the cover over the filters. Start off by snapping the tabs into the back to kind of create that hinge, and then reseat the water drain that plugs into that outlet on the side of the cover. And finally, we're going to reinstall and tighten the 2 screws that hold the front of the cover in place. Lastly, we're going to put the dash panel back on. Clip the wire harness back into its slot right in the middle. Then don't forget to plug the footwell light back in so it will actually turn on. And from this position, you'll finally be able to see how the panel actually stays into place. It has a tab that kind of slides onto a hook that's on the cover. So push that into place and then swing it up so that you can secure the front of the panel by turning each of those quarter turn tabs, and that'll lock it into place. Now, this is the point where I admit I messed up, because when I was looking into how to do this DIY, I realized I got the cabin air filter kit that comes with 2 that both go underneath the glove box area, and one does the front air and one filters the air going to the rear seats. But if you have 3rd row climate control, BMW calls it the 5-zone climate control, then there's actually a 3rd filter that goes in the trunk as well. So it does have its own separate part number, but somebody on the forums did confirm it's the exact same air filter as the 2 that go into the front area. So if you want, you can just buy 2 kits, and then you'll have an extra one for the next time you need to do this service, and it's a little bit cheaper to buy it that way. So even though I don't have it, we're gonna go ahead and go to the trunk, and I'll show you guys how to replace it, so that way I can get it done when my 3rd air filter comes in. All right, so again, if you have an X7 with this control panel at the back, then this indicates you've got separate climate control for the 3rd row, and you can change the temperature and stuff for people in the very back seat. So if you have this option, then you also have a cabin filter behind this panel. So what you're gonna do to access that is just kind of slide it out this way and pull it up to get the panel out of the way. And then we've got this duct right here. I know it says press up for open, but we're actually gonna push down. So push it down as hard as you can, and then kind of pry it out this way. And then you can pull it up to release it from the duct at the bottom. And then this panel is where you're actually going to find the cabin filter. So there's a little tab towards the top. You're gonna push up on that tab, and then this comes off, and here is your cabin filter. So it's a little hard to pull out. It fits in here pretty tight, but I'm gonna reach in with the tip of my finger, and then we can kind of twist it and pull it out. And so this is the cabin filter. Again, it is the exact same as the ones that you installed at the front, but unfortunately, BMW does not sell this in the kit. So it doesn't come in a kit of 3, only 2 come in the package, or you can buy it individually, but individually it's a lot more expensive. So if you do have the 3rd row, I highly recommend just getting 2 kits so that you'll get 4 and save the extra one for the next time you need to replace the cabin filters. But with that being said, we're gonna pretend I got a new one. So, oh, hey, look, it's definitely not the exact same cabin filter. So we're gonna go ahead and slide this in at an angle. Again, make sure you watch the arrow direction, should be pointed towards the front of the car, but slide that into its slot. And then we've got the actual cover that goes on it. Make sure that same tab that you pulled on is towards the top of it. And we'll line up all the tabs and everything to get it in place. And then push down on the tab to lock it in. And there we should be good. And then the last thing, we'll put this duct on. This will be the opposite of before, so you're gonna push it all the way down. And then pry this out slightly to line it up with the upper duct. And then it should lock into place. And then put your panel back on. And you're done.
Ta-da!
So yeah, overall pretty straightforward, not a lot of tools needed or anything like that, but it's still impressive to me that BMW found a way to fit 3 cabin filters in this car, but it does make everything more comfortable, especially with kids in the back, and definitely we use the 3rd row from time to time, so giving everybody the ability to control their own system and having, you know, different temperatures around where it makes everybody comfortable is a nice convenient option. So glad to have that, and glad this service wasn't too expensive. Like I said, if you've got the 3 rows and the 5-zone climate control, just buy 2 of the kits, so that will give you the extra filter that you need, and then you can keep the extra in for in the next 60,000 miles when you do the service again. So hopefully this helps you out and answers any questions you guys might have, but otherwise I think that is it for this video. So thank you guys for watching, and I hope this helps, and if you have any other questions or comments, leave them down below.